What's up, everybody? This is RoboGuap. This is gonna be a requested video. I was making shorts to address a fellow YouTuber. Um, he is a new player to Destiny 2, and a lot of his concerns and I wouldn't say complaints, but just needs that weren't being met because of how the game is in its current state. Um, they were not. They were not able to get the full experience. He is having to go to YouTube to, find all this information from various YouTubers instead of being able to get something from just one person. And that's kind of what I want to do with this video is I kind of want to just mash all the info into one video. Hopefully it doesn't go too long. But the things that he addressed in his video was starting on this page. His mod section was not lit up. He does have no idea about the artifact apparently, because if you go in your artifact, you can see that the meta for the anti-barrier, unstoppable, and our overload weapons, they were not explaining that in the game on how to do that. As a new player, you come into the game and you don't have any gear, any exotics, or anything that kind of tells you what to do. So starting on this side of things, this is our mods for our weapons. These are going to be barrier for anti-barrier champions, unstoppable for unstoppable champions, and overload for overload champions. Now these champions don't appear everywhere in the game. These champions are in raids, dungeons, higher tier level raids, and higher tier level dungeons. Sometimes there's base dungeons and raids that have them, but they're not as frequent. Some strikes have them now as they update over time, as well as lost sectors. So lost sectors on the harder modes have these as well. And this is where you go to be able to combat them. You go to your artifact, and then you decide what weapon you want to use for anti-barrier champions, or barrier champions. It's currently a sidearm or a sniper rifle. You can also have anti-barrier from, if you read under here, radiant effects, unraveling weapon, and volatile weapon, using your subclass. For unstoppable, if we go back in here, unstoppable is currently glaives, fusion rifles, and rocket launchers. So if you go to read under here, you can also do arc blind, solar ignition, stasis shatter, and strand suspend. Now these are all keywords in each of the subclass. Currently I only will have access for that in solar, and I don't have strand or stasis unlocked, and arc, because I decided to go with void and solar for my first subclasses to have access to. So depending on what subclasses you have access to early on and how much you've played through, you will not see these different volatile, blind, ignition, shatter, suspend, because you don't have access to all of the subclasses yet. Now this is the key reason why I suggest starting the final shape before you do anything, because with the final shape it gives you access to the prismatic subclass that gives you access to those subclasses without having to play the corresponding DLC for stasis or strand. You get it in that Final Shape campaign with Prismatic. Spoiler alert. But that's the gist of this section right here for the barrier, the unstoppable, and overload. You're just coinciding whatever weapon gives you that perk for that section. Now this section on the armor, it goes pretty deep because on the surface level you see 6 different stats. You have a mobility stat, a resilience stat, a recovery stat, and a discipline stat, as well as an intellect and as well as a strength. Now, which stat you want to focus first requires what class are you playing. Are you a hunter like me? Your stat, as it says in the box, is a hunter class stat in mobility. If you're a Titan, it's going to say resilience stat is the Titan stat. And then recovery will be a warlock stat. So the resilience goes towards the shield that the Titan can pop, and the recovery goes towards the rift that a warlock can pop. Making you able to use that ability more often. So that's what these stats are right here. Over here in the gear section, we start getting into more in-depth building and crafting options. So we'll go to the exotic first, and starting out, you will not have many exotics. There's multiple avenues and multiple ways to get exotics now. It is not as hard as Destiny 1 was. And I can make a whole nother video on how to obtain exotics and where to get them and what you need and what to do. So if you want to see that, please leave a comment, please leave a like, follow, so we can, keep in touch and I can make these videos that y'all request. This is my first long-term video in a while that I've made. I've been focusing more on shorts, and I covered all of this in shorts, but I was, suggested to make a long-term or a long-form video to get all the information in one place. So starting at the top, we have our helmet, we have our gauntlets, we have our chest armor, our leg armor, and our cloak. Now, I'm not going to address too much the helmet and the leg armor because you can only get so much on a blue item. What you really want is the legendary item because it is the closest that you will get to, an exotic level piece of gear. Exotic being the best that you can get, has the most, how should I say, an additional perk on top of just having, these mods unlocked. So this is why an exotic weapon or an exotic gear piece is coveted and sought after, because there's many effects you can have from having these exotic pieces, depending on which one you acquire. For example, this exotic piece is not game breaking or, doesn't do anything crazy, but if you look here on most of the exotics, you can have a artifice mod slot inserted in here. And what that does is I have an artifice cloak, and we'll continue talking about mods and all that with this cloak. It is an artifice armor. This is an artifice slot. It allows you to add an additional either resilience, discipline, intellect, mobility, recovery, or strength stat to your current stats. So let's say you're at 77 mobility and I want to switch to 80 mobility to go to a tier 8. I can pick that and now I'm at 80 mobility. So this is just a little bump more to the stats that you're building in. And that's why if you hear other people talking about artifice armor or maxing out a exotic item, that's what they're doing. They're trying to get that little bump to the stat that they are focusing. But continuing on, for the cloaks, you can do a general slot mod, and then going forward, if you have an artifice, you can do a different slot for a different stat. And then going forward from there, you can pick from this list of mods in the current armor piece you are looking at. So, for example, the Hunter Cloak, you can add something like Time Dilation, which delays an armor charge, which is a whole nother, video. Or you can pick to have your armor charges give you a bonus to recovery. You can use it to, when your class ability is fully expended, your armor charge can consume and you can gain class ability energy for each of the armor charges you have. Or you can just go with the Bomber, which reduces grenade cooldown when you use your class ability. Outreach, which is reduce melee cooldown when using your class ability. Or Distribution, it reduces all ability cooldowns when using your class ability in your targets. So you can go and pick from multiple mods in each armor piece to make a build that goes towards your character. And it goes in depth like that for all the pieces of armor. Now, the only limit you're going to have is this energy right here, and then which mods you're using. Each mod has a number next to it. So you have to really kind of pick and choose what you're using, because the more you use energy, eventually you run out if you're not maxed out to 10. So that's what a cloak can do. Now, a chest piece is different. Chest piece can be defensive. It can be used in resistances for defensive, sniper damage resistance, melee damage resistance, concussive resistance, which is like enemies that shoot things that explode on the ground, like Hydras. Hydras have an exploding attack that shoots the ground, the Vex enemy. Even, there's a lot of Vex enemies that have that concussive kind of damage. Even Knights shoot that arc concussive damage. So that goes towards that, and you can have an arc resistance with that, and it can, kind of mitigate the damage a little bit. You can also do an emergency reinforcement, endurance that helps your resilience, or you can have, increase the number of stacks of armor charge you can carry by 1. And then you can also focus into like an unflinching aim. Like, let's say you're playing PvP and you want to have less flinching when you're aiming, you can use these mods towards whatever corresponding element you are using in your weapon. Or you can add additional reserves to your weapon and this corresponding element as well. So you can do that on a chest piece. Now, if we look at our gauntlets now, we can look at what we can do with that. You can have, increased reload for damage phases to be able to reload faster to do more damage to the corresponding element. You can also have a faster ready and stow speed for the corresponding element. This can help you with a powered melee attack, and when you use your melee attack, it reduces your grenade cooldown. Or when you use your grenade, you get class ability energy. Or your grenade final blows can create orbs of power to go towards your super. So there's multiple ways and multiple things you can build, and you kind of just want to narrow down what you're building to do that. And that's pretty much, without going too much longer, that's pretty much what the armor mod and the weapon mod system is. If you have any suggestions or questions, or anything that you want me to make a video on, don't hesitate to reach out, and we can go from there, and I can help you. The last thing I will add, though, before I forget, is to max out your gear. Here, you need different pieces of materials. So to completely max out, you need Ascendant Shards, and depending on if it's a legendary or an exotic, you will need different amounts of Ascendant Shards. The other items you use when building your gear and leveling up your gear is going to be an enhancement prism for like the mid tiers, and then the enhancement core for the lower tiers. So these 2 or 3, I don't have any of the exotic one of the for completely maxing out. I don't have any more Ascendant Shards. Those materials you get from multiple sources, and just to give an idea, so if you go into your director, you come to your screen and you load in and get your character selected. You go open director, and you can go and look here in the Vanguard. The Vanguard has something called Nightfalls. So Nightfalls are what you're working towards being able to run, because that is where your materials is going to come from when you do it. If we go in here, it tells you your rewards, and this is where you get your enhancement cores, your enhancement prisms, your nightfall weapons that are focused for the week, and at times exotic gear. Now, the higher tier you go, the more common they become. Here, enhancement cores are common, enhancement prisms are rare. You go to expert, enhancement prisms are uncommon, and then you go to master, and then your enhancement prisms are common, and Ascendant Shards, as you can see, are uncommon. So it's a lot of grinding multiple times, but the more focused and more build oriented you are, the better it's going to be. So just be sure to look at what your build is. Make sure you look at the mission modifiers that are shown here. It's going to show you have a overcharged trace rifle, an arc surge, a strand surge, and then from there it'll tell you what you're going to be looking at facing. So make sure you keep an eye on that, and then it tells you what champions you will face too. So that's where the weapon mods come into play. And like I said, the higher difficulty you go into, the more you're gonna realize how important it is to build and look at what you're equipping your character with and what weapons you're using. But that's all I have for now. I've gone way longer than what I thought I was gonna go for. Again, like, follow, just more engagement, the more I can start making videos toward the new player, and the more feedback I get, the better we can get other players in that left or are trying the game for the first time or are returning, and whatever the issue is, or whatever life situation comes up, that's what we're gonna be able to do.